Hi, this is Micki with Checkpoint Software Technologies, and I'm super glad to be here this year again at the DevOps Summit and presenting to you guys a little bit about DevSecOps today. And so, welcome. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward to taking questions and getting you answers afterwards. You can reach out via the conference. So again, my name is Mickey Bolin, and today I'm gonna make this a little bit fun and interactive. Since you guys are developers and you care about security, I don't care what anyone else says. The subject today is covert operations or covert ops on DevOps. Why hackers are targeting developers and what you can do about it. And I will give you some tips, and then maybe we can talk some more. All right, so you guys are hearing lots of stuff in headlines. I know that recently we saw there's another big expose of like a developer credentials, third party contractor, VPN access into a company, and this was with Uber. This is recent. All of these other in the news, these hacks for SolarWinds, Orion, and some downstream attacks against Microsoft and Azure, and there's pretty much no company that has escaped these type of attacks. So ultimately, what are these attacks about? These attacks are about getting an organization's software supply chain. And as being developers and developing code, obviously you guys are an integral part of the software supply chain. And thus it's so important for us to get the word out and explain to you guys why you as developers, and this is for development teams, leadership, development engineers, operations engineers, coders, everyone that manages application software development and DevOps, the CI/CD pipeline. We're going to talk about that. It's something for everyone. So stay tuned and don't check out. There's something for you here. I guess the latest one that probably was really earth shaking was Christmas last year with Log4j or Logjam. That was Apache Log4j. This exploit was actually a vulnerability that was in Apache remote Log4j and basically allowed remote code execution. So that wreaked havoc on a lot of customers. And this is so huge. The scale is so ginormous. It's super important for all of us to become more cybersecurity aware and honestly to code defensively. So again, why should you care? Ultimately, it's about the software supply chain. It's about getting into companies, getting in their software supply chain, getting into downstream customers, stealing data, corporate espionage, disruption. So your software supply chain, your supply chain, which software is always involved, is part of your company's integrity. And many organizations are in industries where these attacks have they're critical. So the public has trust in these industry sectors, travel, logistics, energy, um, government. So we need integrity, and we have potential national security issues. All right, so let's get into this. Why are hackers targeting developers? Well, first of all, developers, as you guys know, you guys are superhuman. So developers are king. You guys have typically have credentials that have access into development platforms, into software and customer data. You're superhuman, and you're an integral part of the software development lifecycle. Also, humans are the weakest link, and even though we're superhumans, like we can make mistakes, and hackers will love to exploit that. So don't be surprised if right now within your organizations that your DevOps are being your engineers and your coders are being being socially engineered, surveilled, and have reconnaissance basically going on by hackers. So again, if we can get the coder credentials, typically that's a holy grail into the organization. Developers have access to source code, to highly protected IT resources, as we talked about, and also sometimes more data than they should. Typically, developers are over provisioned. We see this over and over again, and sometimes even when a developer switches roles in the company, sometimes their credentials, their role based access control is not modified to change the access that they need. So it can be a big problem. Um, if the hackers get developer credentials, they can create a host of problems. So inserting malicious code into applications, they can leak or copy source code, adjust or remove security controls, steal production or customer data, install backdoors. We just saw the Capital One. It was an IT worker that has just gotten probation. For the love of me, I don't understand how only probation, but this person was responsible for like $187 million in legal, regulatory, and other payouts by Capital One. This person stole like 100 million customer records, and this was an insider that basically got in all the cloud assets and cloud infrastructure, S3 buckets and so forth. So it's, to me, it's terrible. I'm pretty serious and hawkish about people paying for doing things like this. Hackers can also install backdoors so they can gain surveillance, but they can also put backdoors in there so that they can go in downstream, get into customers that are part of the organization's customer base, and also tamper with infrastructure as code, which is a lot of times how all of these resources are provisioned. Developers have access to critical database information. Sometimes sensitive data should be redacted when we're using that, but sometimes not. And then also potentially uh, create a developer account or use a developer credentials as a launch pad to go and move laterally in an environment. So again, if hackers can get access to the DevOps automation, they can actually further their attack surface. So all of these platforms, tools, and stuff are interconnected. Most of these are done on a combination of private and public cloud infrastructure, in SaaS accounts and using PaaS developer platforms sometimes. So all of these things are interconnected, dramatically interconnected. uh, anyway, hackers can tamper with the code itself, and also tamper with open source code and then get everyone to use it, and thereby exploiting all of the users of the tampered and malicious code. All right, so what do they want? They want your soul. They want it. They want software. They want the supply chain. They want to hijack the software manufacturing process. That's what we saw with SolarWinds Orion. They want to compromise upstream, downstream, and the biggest attack surface they can. That is that is the goal. So a couple really quick examples. SolarWinds Orion. This was where we're still, the attribution is to Russia, to the SVR, aka Cozy Bear. But basically, they were able to get into the organization and modify a product enhancement package. So customers that are actually updating their software and getting all the updates, they're the ones that got kind of hosed up pretty bad because they downloaded a malicious update that then basically put Cobalt Beacon, Strike Beacon, and other things on the customer's environment, and then the bad guys were able to surveil the customer's environment. Um, that was actually code that was checked out and signed, and then basically pushed, should never have really happen. Another example for Russian hackers where they compromised the software update process was ME Docs. I don't know if you guys remember that. Hackers also love to get in managed service providers so that they can score big points when they get into a managed service provider. An example is Kaseya VSA. It's a remote monitoring and management platform. Customers use this to manage their own infrastructure, and the bad guys were able to get in there and push out malicious code that then phoned home and installed additional malicious code to all of the computers that were managed by Kaseya. Uh, Hackers love to mess with content delivery networks. Everybody forgets this, but most of this software is delivered by CDN. So if they can inject malicious content and get people to use it, then and to grab it, then they actually have the ability to reach a lot more downstream endpoints and computers. An example is Nox Player. I don't know if you guys remember that one. Hackers love to exploit vulnerabilities in open source code and third party libraries. They all have vulnerabilities, they all have dependencies, and exploiting these allows huge payoff for hackers because everyone that's utilizing it, which is usually everyone, can be compromised. One of the most infamous hacks is Equifax. So that was via Apache Struts, which is basically wasn't patched, and that was a shame. And also, we see the Apache Log4j. And then hackers also love to compromise contractors or software developer teams that are not part of the organization but have privileged access to privileged and highly restricted resources into development sites. They can actually get in there, generate certificates, tokens, golden tokens. They can sign and seal software for downstream push. They can they can target they can compromise the target and all the downstream customers, and that's like example is Target and Uber. All right, so more in-depth examples. So notwithstanding, you've heard probably so much more than you ever want to hear about SolarWinds Orion. I'm going to talk about Ubiquity and CodeCov. So there's a lot of organizations that have infamous attacks. Doesn't seem to matter like these attacks, or maybe they're hit on the company's integrity. Maybe even if they're publicly traded, maybe they take a financial hit. There's like lawsuits and regulatory issues and fines and fees and all that. But one where a company was almost literally killed by a malicious actor is Ubiquity. Ubiquity makes web cameras and cameras, IoT type cameras, listening devices, like recording stuff. It's really big. It's cheap. They have Wi-Fi network gear as well. And so I don't know if you guys remember this, but it turned out that was a senior developer for Ubiquity. It basically killed the entire company. So the hacker, the bad guy, it turns out to be an insider. He compromised credentials and was able to get in all the AWS cloud infrastructure. So AWS virtual machines and containers, applications running in containers. They got root access to all the AWS accounts, S3 buckets, databases. They got user database credentials and secrets. They were able to forge single sign-on cookies. They actually went to Ubiquity and said, "Hey, if we stole your source code, if you give us Bitcoin, we won't release this information to the world or sell your source code. So give us Bitcoin." So they extorted the company, and then when the company didn't pay, they basically went public and then released the source code, and basically it turned out that it was inside. It was a senior developer. So we'll talk about why you want to have least privilege and manage developer credentials. This is an example where this person, if we have been doing role-based access control, specific project, or only scoped out access for identity and access management, privilege access management, and that stuff expires and using like more of a zero trust approach, then we would have been able to restrict or constrain the damage that that person could have done as an insider. The other one I think is super important to mention is CodeCov. So you're going to get into CodeCov right now. So CodeCov is it's basically, you guys probably all know CodeCov and probably use CodeCov. It's supposed to help with better development, right? So it's that's the goal anyway for this organization. So what happened with CodeCov is the hackers were able to gain access to a database. Or I'm sorry, get access into CodeCov's Docker image creation, and they were able to extract credentials, and then they modified CodeCov's Bash uploader script. So when they modified CodeCov's Bash uploader script, they actually put a malicious IP into the script. And so what happened is this took about 2 months for this all to take place. They compromised that legitimate, code bash uploader. They made it so that when it phoned home, it would literally go then and come into the end user environment and their GitHub environment and look for keys and tokens and secrets in their environmental variables. So the customers are using this in their CI/CD pipeline with their CI server. I cannot speak today. And so then these groups, the people that use this code bash uploader script, grab this script, the malicious IP phone home. They basically, the bad guys are able to then get into all of the downstream customer sites. So this was basically this. There was a CI, it would pass through this CI runner that would be accessible to the bash uploader script when it was executed. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? I guess a couple of things. So downstream, everything that was impacted for CI servers was CodeCov Actions Uploader, CodeCov Circle CI Orb, CodeCov Bitrise Step Uploaders. They were impacted by the breaches, and it was literally hundreds, if not thousands, of customers. The moral of the story: we should never curl the bash. Probably shouldn't have done that, and we should never execute code that we haven't validated. Actually, the hash was different. So CodeCov had, in their defense, they had the hash of the actual script, and the hash for the malicious injected script was did not match, but people didn't check it, and so there we have it. All right. When I say all this stuff, I want you to understand that we understand your pain. So it's all about, this is not to say, okay, developers are causing all kinds of problems for us. It's not about that at all. What it is actually working together to solve some challenges. I'm going to take this first up high and want to say that when GitHub first kind of started, it initially had like 46,000 repos, and this was back in 2009. By January of 2020, there were 28 million repos in GitHub. And as of June this year, 2022, there are over 200 million repos in GitHub, and 28 million of those are public. So we've seen like just a ginormous increase of development, rapid, agile development and source code being managed in GitHub, and it is an attack surface for everyone, and we want to create some balance and help you understand what's at risk here, but it's not to blame, right? So like what am I trying to say? GitLab actually did a survey last year, and the survey, it was a global survey for development, and it was like how is DevSecOps maturing? And what we learned from the survey is that developers are under a tremendous amount of pressure. It's like really nothing we didn't know. Developers under a tremendous amount of pressure to release code as quickly as possible. So nothing new there. But we also learned that the security teams kind of lack faith in the developer team. So the security teams feel like that the development teams may not have the abilities to securely develop and release applications. And we also found that everyone felt that the organizations were not giving them enough support to actually code securely and develop secure applications. The other thing is kind of trust, right? So there was a little bit of a general lack of trust by all parties, and also a little bit of questioning and like who is responsible for this. So some of the people felt that that security was on the hook. Another group of people thought that everyone was responsible, and then a lot of the organization felt, the survey respondents and the organization felt it was the responsibility of developers. And then some said that the operations would be responsible. So it's obvious that we're lacking clarity here. And it's also obvious that everyone is really craving that there is guidance from the business and there's cross teaming support. Somebody keeps on telling me like developers don't care about security, and I tell them I couldn't disagree more. I think developers are concerned with security, but they need the guardrail. They need guidance. And many teams have it. They're getting towards DevSecOps, but many teams are still struggling. So you might be in there somewhere on the on that spectrum. There's a range of customers and maturities for DevOps. Maybe the development teams work alone. Maybe they're actually doing a lot of collaboration. I see both. I see actually developers working on the security teams to help them figure out how to help the development teams. And I see security team sending people over to the development teams and doing security ops within development. All right. So what can we do about it? What can we do about it? So number one, we have to protect the developer. As a superhuman, the developer is a target. So you guys heard all the horror stories. We know all the challenges. We know all the constraints, and the pressures that the developer teams are under. So now what can we do? Number one, we've got to educate the developers that they are targets. So they might not think, you see someone out here, hey, I'm working on this new code our company is doing, like they're Twittering and their LinkedIn. That's a target right there. And don't believe for 1 minute that somebody's not watching and paying attention. And these are nation state actors sometimes, and they're extremely savvy. So they need to understand that they're under attack for social engineering. It can be done through the social media platforms. It can be done through sending somebody a LinkedIn connection, and someone clicks it and they want to talk about, hey, what are you doing? This new cool project, and then they install malicious code. So we have to protect the developer as a person. We have to protect their endpoints that they're working with. So their laptops, all their devices where they're coding, their browsers, and we actually have to give them as much constrained trust. So more of a zero trust approach in what they have access to when they go and connect into these platforms, tools, infrastructure, including cloud infrastructure. And then we also need to maintain their credentials. So, like when they're working on a project, that they're not running the project anymore, they're off the project, they're out of the company. We need to they need to cut their credentials, right? That's just how it needs to be. Phishing is still the number one thing. So, links through email or social media, click on this, it's too late. So, we need to get the developers know. I'm sure you guys are doing ethics training, data privacy, anti phishing training, security training within your organizations, but I think we need to do special training for the developers. Secondly, we need to plumb security into the CI/CD pipeline. That means doing automated security testing. So we can do that with static code analysis, infrastructure as code analysis, looking for secrets, for hidden embedded key. Secret information, for excessive permissions, for vulnerabilities, for potential exploits. So we can do all that in the pipeline. Then we need to do security of the CI/CD pipeline. So this is the authentication that is required to push changes, login tracking, privilege access management tracking, and eventing. for user events, identity and access management. What did you do? What did you elevate privileges? What did you change? And this also pulls through forensics when we get to the security automation operations. Key management, huge. Secure storage of build artifacts, huge. And then we want to pull through security, automation, and operations. So, security as code, configuration management, automated incident response, and forensics, secure backups, and log monitoring. Hey, wait, what about application security? So, a lot of times after the application is released and it's in production, the security operations teams run behind, and maybe sometimes they do some pen testing or security testing. Maybe sometimes they do some dynamic application or runtime testing. By then, it's kind of a little bit the horse is out of the gate. So we can talk about that, but usually we want to do that AppSec testing before it goes into production. And I'll explain a little bit about that. When the application's out and running and it's in prod, we got to be doing runtime application security. So we need to look at the web, how customers are accessing the web and the APIs, and basically see, like, we should be looking for SQL injection and other types of things going on in with the application itself. Let me shut this off real quick. I apologize. All right, so don't forget the post production application, runtime application testing. All right, so this is not about one thing. It's not about just the person. It's not about just the pipeline. It's not about your IDE plugin. It's not about training. It's about people, process, and technology. So we need to do everything. Teaming is a force multiplier. So again, I mentioned about, experts like cross-pollinating teams. We on the security side, like cybersecurity experts, we need to be giving the business one guidance and to advice on what to do. So, like, how can we make this streamlined? And we should be educating the development teams and helping them plug this stuff in. The other thing is we want to achieve a collective goal of secure coding, and we need an executive champion or a C-level champion for this. We want people to understand that the longer that this defect, vulnerability, or security issue goes through, through the beginning of like coding to the applications in runtime and production, the longer that goes, the more expensive it is, the more at risk the company is, the more the technical debt is. So we need the C levels to understand that and actually pitch this culture and champion a culture of DevSecOps. We want developers to have all the fun and joy of the life of developing without having to be stressed out, and also rework. Like, why find stuff later downstream when we can put guardrails up their security testing up front and the beginning of the code development, so that that reduces runtime, fixes in runtime, and reduces risk for the organization, because I know what you guys don't like any more than anything is redoing code. And then how do we, like, once we do that, how do we put like governance, risk, and compliance around this? So anything that you guys do, you have to be able to prove that this happened automatically. This was like a stage gate, something failed. A container image was bad. It has vulnerabilities. It's been modified. It has embedded something. Basically, pull that image, throw it away, get a new image, stop the build process. Don't deploy on that, right? That's what we want. So we want it stage gated, but you have to be able to show the business that, hey, we found this, we fixed this, we reduced this risk. And these, all of your instrumentation has to be able to show that you're in compliance. From a GRC perspective, we can't really, we can't not prove to the business how the automation and the efforts we're doing for secure coding on the front end of the development cycle, how those things are paying off. We have to show the business that. So that's this whole thing of shift left security. We're going to talk about it more, but it's basically, instead of like waiting until deployment, it's pushing everything from a security perspective upstream as far to the left as possible in the dev. And that starts with static code analysis. And we'll look at a pyramid in a minute. And then also like the application security and cloud teams, I see a lot of cloud teams that have cloud architects. We have sometimes these guys have they have responsibility for at the EA level, so enterprise architecture standards for the business. Sometimes they're like putting stuff up really quick, and they're looking at infrastructure as code to like get faster builds to speed up the resources that dev teams need, or for dev tests, for UAT testing. The other thing in this is that we need to understand that these guys need to work together, and that this is a big attack vector when we start deploying into cloud on cloud assets, and there's different groups looking at different pieces and not being a unified view. The arsenal, number one, the OWASP top 10. So this top 10 is for web and API. It's brilliant. You can scan for cross-site scripting, SQL injection vulnerabilities, and we can do this before you actually deploy. The other thing is we can do this as an automated. So we can build the code, scan the code, and write the code, plug in the security scans with the recommended fixes, and do that before it gets more expensive. The second one is MITRE's top 25 most dangerous software issues. So we want to look at that, and any of our testing tools should be able to do these things. We want a hardened authentication, so MFA everywhere, especially for privilege access accounts, and also single sign-on for everyone, restrict IP ranges and so forth. But we really need a hardened authentication process. And then we want to enforce least privilege. So we want a blast radius to be constrained to the smallest possible bit, right? So if somebody does do something bad, either internal by external hackers, or an internal human is socially engineered and their credentials are then stolen, what we want to do is limit the amount of damage that can be done by accident or maliciously. And we want to reduce that damage radius as much as possible, which means we need to audit everything. Also, we want to, this is huge, eliminate secrets in code. Insiders can be malicious, as we talked about, but we can't have hard coded credentials anywhere, no repos. We also want to make sure that we don't have excessive permissions in infrastructure as code. We can check hard coded credentials easily in production at new commits before they're merged into the main branch, and also in all your GitHub repos and environments. Automated provisioning and deprovisioning of developer accounts. Sometimes this falls outside the auspices of like HRIS. These guys have such privileged access, unless you give them zero trust network access for developers into a totally sandbox or constrained environment. Developers have a lot of privileged access to data, like we talked about. And many times there's a lag between being on a project and being off a project, moving to another team in the organization, or ending a contract as a third party, helping as a partner developing, or a managed service provider helping develop infrastructure as code or running cloud environments. We want to deprovision those as quickly as possible. So and make sure within your organization that there's not sprawl on developer credentials. So senior developer moves into product management, then they need to lose all their access. Audit the basics. Too easy. We can look at again This is huge to make sure that your source code is not being leaked out there in the world. We can help you with that. We can do code printing, and even see if there's code that's been stolen from your company that's slightly modified. Also, looking for hard coded credentials, keys, tokens. That should never be exposed externally. And then something that's can be technology driven, but it's really has to be process driven, is enforcing branch protection rules, and we need to monitor critical code. So before that code is merged into the main branch, there should be a code checking review. This should include series of security tests, including DAS, SAS, I'm sorry, SAS, SCA, secret detection, and peer review, and that should be stage gated. So if this doesn't happen, it doesn't go into production. And we should not allow force pushing. It should be disallowed, and rules enforcing branch protection should be monitored so that no one can, uh, either an insider or a malicious actor. We want to ensure that they cannot circumvent security control. So we want to monitor that. So DevSecOps, what does it mean? You guys have seen all of these. Basically, if you look at it, you guys are knowing what the developers are doing. What we want to do is some more security awareness training, and then maybe do some pen testing with the developers so that they can see what's going on. We need to do baselining, and we need to see when the code is drifting. But all of this stuff you guys are pretty much aware of. Operations is like it's runtime, right? Everything's running. They have to maintain, health, security, infrastructure. Infrastructure as code. There's a lot going on there. So we want to unify this for DevOps. But now we want to add the security piece into here. So we want to make sure that the software is compliant. It's if you guys have NIST, you have an environment that's PCI, GDPR issues, all those requirements we have to be able to ensure compliance. And then we want to have automation for incident response and incident handling, and we want to do early code analysis. We want to make sure the security controls are embedded and automated, and we want all of this to be integrated. So if you can do it within your IDE, that'd be awesome. If not, or do it in the pipeline as automated triggers, and we'll talk about that in a second. Discover exploits and vulnerabilities early, security issues, never have secrets, any type of credential abuse. And this is just a really quick chart, but as you move up this stack of what you can do from a security perspective, the cost, if you don't fix these things early, the cost and the technical debt to the organization and the risk go up. So more complex code with security issues or holes that no one wants to fix, and you keep just pushing up the stack, and doing minor tweaks to it to not deal with it. This is going to be a big problem in the long run, and you guys, you know that you don't like that. So static application testing, unit testing, infrastructure as code, we want to do that. We can fix that in the IDE. And then as you move up this stack, so source code, open source code, dependency scanning, and vulnerabilities, too easy. We can do that early. Container image scanning, container scanning. Move this out of the way. I can't move this. So, container runtime scanning, dynamic threat analysis. So, when the container is up and running, because some of this stuff can actually tell what's the tools or automated tools aren't going to detect things until runtime. You want to do that. Network scanning, so including cloud infrastructure, cloud security posture management is in there. Integrated application security testing and RASP, so runtime production or pre-production UAT, and then DAS, so dynamic end-to-end testing and automation tools. We can automate all of this. And when we get to the top level, you're going to be having maybe the peer reviews as manual, pen testing, and bug bounties. So we can do this in the pipeline. Checkpoint has some solutions. I'm not here to push Checkpoint. I just want you guys to see that we do have shift left tools We can help you here, so we can actually build all this stuff in. And we have we purchased a company called Spectral. They're in GitHub. You can actually see them in the security. You can use that in the IDE, or you can do that in your CI. Basically, we can do version control. We can do also like guardrails using regex. We can also code print. So we can their hashes, they need to be protected as well, because they're not secrets really, but they are protected. But we can hash your source code and then look for your source code out there. And even if there's fuzzings, or your source code's been modified, we'll catch it. But we can do all these things and reduce your risk and your challenges, and make you have a happy, joyful coding experience. So that's the end of my presentation, you guys. With DevSecOps, we can combat the covert ops that's being run against your organization, help you guys be faster, stronger, sleeker, more glamorous, and be the rock stars that you guys are in the organization, and not the people that are being pointed to for security failures. So, love to talk to you more. I hope you guys will reach out. My name is Micki Bolin. Again, I'm an architect and evangelist here at Checkpoint, and I hope that I get to talk to you soon. Have a great day. Thank you. Enjoy the summit. Bye bye.